Good morning. We will start in about 10 minutes. Hey, good morning, Vidya. How are you doing? All right, good morning, everyone. I was just going to wait maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll start.
Hi, Iqbal. While we are waiting, a quick question.
Sure.
Have you been able to upload the videos from yesterday?
I have, yeah. So what
Okay.
I'll do, yeah. So I'll send you.
You send the link, so I'll go check it.
Sure, no problem. Happy to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. Thank you all for attending. I really appreciate it. Let me see. Okay, so this is the link that I'm going to be sharing is the one for the one that I shared yesterday. So that's the English language panel, mostly English. And then if you just click on it, what you'll be able to then see is the Western Indian Oceans Study Series portal, and then you can click on the Gujarati one. I haven't had a chance to edit the Gujarati one, so you would actually have to just sort of fast forward and find the Gujarati video as well. That's on there. Yeah, so it shouldn't be too difficult to navigate.
Thank you. Thanks, Iqbal.
Yeah, of course. Thanks. I'm just waiting. Okay, Amit, you're on. Vidya, you're on. Urvashi Ben, you're on. Okay, perfect. All right, so Urvashi Ben, is it okay if we begin now? She's hearing. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, what we'll do is I will start and we'll be recording the session. So I think that'll be easy for everyone. Okay, perfect. All right, excellent. All right, so good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second day of our international conference. So as I had mentioned before, this is a collaboration between Florida International University, Western Indian Ocean Studies Program, and the Department of Religious Studies, and the University of Mumbai Department of Gujarati. So this is the second day of our conference, and we have already had 3 of the 4 panels. So we had a panel yesterday. The first one was around 11 o'clock Indian time, which was a Gujarati panel. Then we had another one yesterday around 6 o'clock Indian time, which was in English and Gujarati. Then a Gujarati one again this morning, and now this evening is the last panel. So just to give you a background again, to recap, the Khōjā studies sort of series started around 5 years ago, and it is a collaboration between a couple of different groups, the University of Mumbai, of course, being one of them. You also have the World Federation of Khōjā Shia Ishnashri Muslim Communities, SEAS, the Center for South Asian Studies in Paris, and our university in Miami. And so the focus is kind of rethinking how academic engagement sort of takes place with regards to the study of vernacular religions. So one is to rethink how the silos that exist within religious studies. So a lot of times Islamic studies tends to focus on Perso-Arabic and Turkish sort of materials that are kind of the center of the discipline. And sort of those narratives, those languages then are sort of central in terms of how Islam is understood and reproduced in scholarship and sort of on campuses. And so the focus of this initiative is to kind of rethink Islam sort of in many different ways. One is sort of as an Indian Ocean interaction. That's one part of it, to sort of think about sort of the history between Asia and Africa as sort of a different type of nexus rather than sort of centering the Middle East in terms of the understanding of Islam, decentering the importance of Arabic and Persian and Turkish in terms of telling the stories, and sort of understanding that there are these massive vernacular archives particularly in Indic languages, that can tell a very complex story and very interesting story. And in places like India and Pakistan and South Asia, particularly after partition, to highlight the interconnections between Indic religions and sort of other monotheistic religions that are also part of the Indic sort of religious milieu. And so this is sort of a continuation of that. We've had 2 major Khōjā studies conferences. The book from the first one will be hopefully coming out by Brill later this year. We're working on the second papers, and then the third conference would be in Miami, depending on sort of the situation with the pandemic in sort of the spring of 2022. And so in between the major conferences that we're having, we like to sort of develop a speaker series as well as sort of these sorts of conferences. And this is kind of the first time that we're doing a purely webinar type of conference. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of the reaction, the results, and sort of how we can improve upon it. And I encourage you all to send me emails and sort of give your feedback so we can improve next time. My email address is Akhtar, IAKHTAR@fiu.edu. And you're welcome to email me anytime. We also have a listserv as well, the Western Indian Ocean Studies listserv, and about once a week we send out different articles that are related to the study of sort of vernacular sort of religion, as well as scholarship, cutting edge scholarship that is being produced around the world and sort of we try to make it sort of open to sort of all scholars. So what we do is we have a private listserv and we download the articles, and then if you're able to, if you're on the listserv, you're able to click on it and you get the full article free of charge, courtesy of our university and our interlibrary loan department. So that's one way that we're trying to democratize sort of the development of academic knowledge. And the second, I think, major thing that we try to do with this series is also then try to rethink authority within academia. So rather than it sort of the development and the production of academic knowledge being something that is held by scholars in universities and then sort of told to people within communities, to understand that the development of scholarly knowledge is a two-way process. It's one in which community members have very valuable and important knowledge that can be shared with scholars in universities, and scholars in universities have perspectives and understandings that can help communities in terms of being able to preserve and understand their own tradition. And so this is really a sort of a mutual relationship. And so the idea behind Khōjā studies is that it's evolving a new type of relationship in terms of thinking about disciplinary boundaries within fields, within this study of religion, anthropology, archaeology, different things, and then also sort of how knowledge is produced, consumed, and disseminated. So hopefully this is part of that. And we're really excited and very honored that you all have taken the time to join us today. As I said earlier, all of the videos are going to be put online on YouTube on our website. So you can search Western Indian Ocean Studies. And also everyone that has registered, I will send them the links so that they can follow up on it. And if you have any guidance, any feedback in terms of how we can improve our programming or themes or people that you think would be interesting for these series, please let us know and we're happy to host them. So with that, again, I'm very honored that you all are able to join us, and I would like to introduce then our first speaker, Amit Ranjan, and the title of his lecture is going to be Prince Dara Shikoh's Syncretic Discourses with Baba Lal Bairagi and the position of Khojas and similar sects in mid-17th century India. We're very honored to have Amit. We've known Amit for many years. Amit first came as a Fulbright foreign language teaching assistant to teach Hindi at FIU around, God, it must be like 4 years ago now. It's been quite a while. He has a doctorate in English from JNU in Delhi, and I don't know if he is back in Delhi now, but he works for NCERT, which is national sort of education body that creates textbooks in India, and he was previously or currently in Bhubaneswar. He's won many awards. He was Australia Awards Ambassador for his book on
John Lang.
John Lang. Okay, that's right, exactly. That's right, John Lang. He's written a poetry book. Don't Forget Me, Leonard Cohen, which he debuted at FIU. He's a prolific author. This is the work that he's going to be sharing today is going to be focusing on Dara Shikoh and kind of some work he's done sort of during that period of South Asian history. Prolific scholar, amazing person. I mean, he has a versatile sort of interest in, religious studies, to poetry, to sort of anthropology. He's interested in social justice matters. Really a wonderful, very talented sort of Renaissance scholar. So we're very honored to have him. And with that, I will spotlight Amit, and you can begin. Amit, are you able to share your screen, or should I share the PowerPoint?
I'll just see. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, all right, so let's do this. Give me 1 minute. All right. What I'm gonna do is, okay, so try it now.
Okay.
And what I'll do is also spotlight you so that everyone will see.
Yes. Thanks a lot, Dr. Akhtar, for your very generous introduction and for your invitation to this conference. Also, Dr. Urvashi Pandya. This is in continuation with the conference we had last year in Bombay, which Dr. Akhtar couldn't make. Now he can attend because it's virtual and not in India. So last year I presented a general overview of Dara Shikoh and Sufism in 17th century. This is a book I'm working on. And so this paper today focuses specifically on conversations between Baba Lal Das Bairagi, who was somewhere near Lahore, and Dara Shikoh. So to give a very quick background, Dara Shikoh was the crown prince, the eldest son of Shah Jahan, was supposed to succeed on his throne, but in battles in 1658 and 1659, in 1658 when Shah Jahan was rumored to be ill, Aurangzeb and Dara fought two bloody battles, one at Agra, one at Ajmer. Dara lost both and eventually was beheaded. So this is a sort of a watershed moment in Indian history, where we often wonder what would have happened if Dara Shikoh had ascended the throne, primarily because he was a very prolific scholar, translator, and a convert to the Qadiriya order, or he was initiated into the Qadiriya order of Sufism formally. And unlike Aurangzeb, who was orthodox, so there's a lot of debate always. It's one of those what-if moments of history. So generally when Dara Shikoh is talked about, it's primarily this battle, and his intellectual contributions are not so much delved into except in philosophy study circles. So I'm trying to attempt in my book to integrate the two, his political and his philosophical struggles both. So before the battle of 1658, Dara seemed to be in a great hurry. He translated 54 Upanishads from Sanskrit to Persian. That work is called Sari Akbari. That's the best work he's known for. And that was translated within 2 years. Before this, he was asked by Shah Jahan to go to Kandahar. Kandahar was an impossible place for the Mughals. They gained and lost it. And eventually during Shah Jahan's time, that almost completely lost it. So Aurangzeb was sent twice and he failed twice in Kandahar. So was Dara sent twice and Dara also failed twice. So while returning from Kandahar in 1653 is when he met Baba Lal. So he was already initiated into the Qadri order and was a disciple of Mian Mir in Lahore. And he was trying to expand his horizons. He had several friends in all kinds of religions. He had Father Buzi, who was a Jesuit Jesuit priest from Spain. There was Sarmad, who was a naked Faqir from Kashan, Iran, a Jew, Armenian Jew, who had become a wandering minstrel in India, and so on and so forth. A very eclectic body of people that Dara had around him. And he had heard a lot about Baba Lal Bairagi, who is known by various names, Baba Lal Das, Baba Lal Bairagi. His followers came to be known as Baba Lalis, similar to Kabir Panthis, Nanak Panthis, etc. And so while returning from Kandahar, he had discourses with Baba Lal, and there are various disputations as to how many times they met and so on and so forth. So let's move according to a structure, dating the texts. So Wilson says that it's probably from 1659, but various other writers like Kanungo, Massignon, etc. Contend that this text is from 1653 because that's the year Suleiman Shikoh, his eldest son, got married. Also, he was in Kandahar he was in Lahore for a long time preparing for the battle in Kandahar. So he was preparing cannons at Lahore. So 1653 is the most likely year when, having stayed a long time in Lahore, so he was the governor, Dara was the governor of Punjab from 1647 until his death. So after the failed Kandahar campaign, there was probably Dara's hunger for intellectual pursuits, as always was. He'd been busy in military campaign for a long time. And so he sought audience with Baba Lal and got it. The date is also supported by the fact that in 1654, one of Major Dara's work, which is kind of lost, I cannot find any copy of it, is Hasnatul Arifin, which is the sayings of irreverent sayings of Sufi saints. So Dara was in a way legitimizing his position, with the ulema getting very hostile towards him by documenting what all the Sufi saints had said. So he was trying to position himself as not a freak, that he was a regular in the order of Sufis, and that he was no aberration in saying various things that he was saying. So there are three aphorisms of Baba Lal mentioned in Hasnatul Arifin in 1654. So clearly he had met him by then. And so the most probably is 1653. Baba Lal is also mentioned in glowing terms in Dara's most important exegesis of his philosophy, which is Majma al-Bahrain, mingling of two seas, which he himself translated into Sanskrit as Samudra Sangam. The history of the text. Professor Parvez Hayat, in his PhD, worked on this conversation, where it's a very useful work. He talks about 6 manuscripts, which he names A to F, out of which Massignon, one of the early French Indophiles from early 20th century, has translated the text A, and Hayat himself has translated the text C. The reason Hayat has translated C is because A was already translated by Massignon, and C has lots of local flavor. It's got a lot of Hindi words and a lot of very earthy metaphors from the region, and which is why he thinks it's much more authentic. So between A and F, the number of questions raised are divergent from 26 to 200. And so there's no ur text, there's no basic text from which the thing has been taken. So generally, historians believe that Chandrabhan Munshi, the scribe of Dara Shikoh, was with him and he noted down. However, Professor Hayat concurs that Chandrabhan Munshi was too good a Persian scholar to write in a very pedestrian sort of day-to-day Persian that this conversation has been recorded in all the 6 texts. So despite the fact that this was a very popular text in the 17th century, it was lost for a good 150 years. When the files of Britain, when the colonial scholars rediscovered it, still now Dara Shikoh was only considered this syncretic figure. His couple of works were taken into account, that too by William Jones and others during the colonial time. And so there was a sort of rediscovery, and so therefore the French interest also in the early 20th century. Now the Mughal context. Dara Shikoh seems to be a freak of destiny, as history often points out, that he is an aberration to the Sunni Islamic rule in India, and that he flirted too much with Hinduism, with Sufism for his own comfort, which is why the ulema deserted him during the war, and so on and so forth. But if you take a deep look into Mughal history, running from Babur up till Shah Jahan, till Dara Shikoh's time, every single ruler had great regard for Sufi saints, including Aurangzeb, whose tomb is in the complex of a Sufi saint in Aurangabad. So they had great faith, and they believed also an anecdote that I like to tell of wet nurses, that all Mughal princes were fed on the milk of Sufi wet nurses, because milk is a metaphor for blood, or milk was considered blood, and so the Sufi princes would imbibe some amount of, the Mughal princes would imbibe some amount of Sufi blood in them. So Akbar is, of course, the most important of all these figures. And Dara was basically running Akbar's project all over again, except that Akbar was completely unlettered. He could not read and write, whereas Dara was a very good scholar, almost a scholar of our modern times, writing exegesis, heavily footnoting things, and so on and so forth. A very quick look at Akbar's reign, which will ground Dara's conversations with Baba Lal. Akbar's association with Khōjā Salim Chishti is very well known. It was with Salim Chishti's blessing that Jahangir was born, and so Akbar founded a whole new city called Fatehpur Sikri in honor of Salim Chishti, where he stayed. And this is where he opened up an Ibadat Khana, for an interfaith dialogue. Initially, it started as a Shia-Sunni dialogue, but with time, Akbar got fatigued with the ulemas over their infighting, and then he started inviting people from other religions. So Jains were invited. Hero Vijay was given the title of Guru. There was Father Xavier, Father Aquaviva from Goa, whom he had disputations about Miraj, or about Christ's position in Bible, or general belief that Gospels have been tampered with. Amongst Hindus also, he had lots of friends. One is Pandit Purushottam, and there's a curious Scott story about this Pandit Purushottam. As Brahmins often believed that they would be defiled in coming in contact with the infidel. So this particular Brahmin was lifted up from on a cot by the wall and raised to Akbar's balcony. And so he was between earth and heaven. And so neither earth nor heavenly curses could touch him. And so hanging in the air, he would hold discourses with Akbar. That's a very interesting story. The Badauni's account about Akbar's court. Crowds of learned men from all nations came to court and were honored with private conversation. After inquiries and investigations, which were their only business and occupation day and night, they would talk about profound points of science and subtleness of revelation, the curiosities of history and wonders of nature, no subjects of which large volumes could give only an abstract summary. Unfortunately, there are only these kind of summaries, but not detailed accounts from Akbar's time, despite very good scholars like Abul Fazl in his court. Ibadat Khana was closed in 1582, and Akbar, tired of the ulemas, which would be a problem again in Dara Shikoh's time, declared himself to be mujtahid, that in case of any disputation between him and the ulemas, his word would prevail, that the king was supreme. So he, in a way, crowned himself as a Sufi prince as well. So there were other innovations that were against the, that were seen as being against Islam, such as the replacement of the Hijra calendar by one dating from Akbar's enthronement, the exchange of Islamic names of the months with those of ancient Parsis, abolition of Muslim holidays, introduction of burial of people with their heads towards the east instead of towards Kaaba. So very interesting, Muhammad Aslam, a scholar, compares Itna Ashari and Ismaili sects, Shia Imam with Akbar, the kind of authority that Akbar held, that his word was the word of the community in that sense. So this tradition of conversation between the kings and yogis has been very long, and interfaith dialogue has been also very long. I'm not going into that. It's beyond the scope of this lecture, which is very short, 20-25 minutes. I'll just get into some opinions about what this kind of diplomacy was. So Jeffrey John Kripal finds that this was Gnostic two-track diplomacy that explores the hermeneutic and counter-cultural resources of opposed traditions. So track 2 diplomacy is where through cultural exchange, you try to have harmony in the society. And track 1 diplomacy would be building gardens, palaces, and so on and so forth. Now, a very interesting accounts by Carl Ernst in Indian Environment, the question of conversion, talks about turf wars between the yogis and the Sufis. So later appropriation, post-partition appropriation kind of separates the Bhakti movement, Sufi movement, Sikhism, Khojas and Nanak Panthis and so on into various kinds of branches, but one would see at this point of time that it's quite nebulous. There are various people who are just fakirs, kalandars, babas. In between these, there are these solid sects as well as there are things in between. But within the Sufi canon, within the established Sufi order, there are lots of panegyrics, hagiographies of Sufi saints where there would be contests between yogi and Sufi, and the Sufi would win and the yogi would prostrate himself instead in front of him and start following his order. So for example, there are some very interesting stories. There's one of a sadhu who's chela, follower, disciple. Chela is the word constantly used, guru and chela. Bhushan flies on a broom every day from Sitara to Banaras to get sheer puri for his Guru, Sadhu. So Hazrat Shah Nur Hamavi sees this and strikes him down from his broom. He falls down and he starts crying that he has to take food for his master. His master would get angry. And Nur Hamavi, what he does is he converts the entire Ganges into a floating arena of Sheer Puri. Like there are several plates of Sheer Puri floating on Ganga, and it goes to Sitara, and the sadhu can have it. And sadhu comes running and prostrates himself after Shah Nur Hamavi. There's another story of Yogi, Yogini, and Sadguru Neer from the Ismaili tradition. And so Sadguru Noor, the yogi throws a staff. Sadguru Noor strikes the staff down. The Yogini shows the miracle of swallowing a snake and spitting it off very naturally. And so he causes the snake to be inside her stomach and she cannot spit it out. And she goes into convulsions, and both the yogi and yogini prostrate in front of Sadguru Noor. Here, an interesting aberration is Satpant, where the Ginans and Satpant tell a different story. For example, a story of Yogi Kanipa and Pir Hassan Kabir al-Din, where Yogi Kanipa loses to Pir Hassan, but Pir Hassan acknowledges that the yogi is an evolved person, and so they are collaborators, and he is not the master of Yogi Kanipa. This is a sort of a metaphor of sects like Khojas at this point of time, whose practices were both Hindu and Muslim and mixed. And so these kind of stories give a metaphor for what these sects were following. Now let's get to the matter of the questions and answers between Baba Lal and Dara Shikoh, which are very interesting. It's very interesting, the C text I'm referring to here of Professor Hayat, the kind of metaphors that Baba Lal uses, even in this very little secretarial account, not a literary account, one can see the kind of sway Baba Lal would have held over his followers, and the kind of earthiness and the metaphors in his language. So I've divided this into 2 or 3 sections just to give an idea of the questions and answers that took place. So the first set of questions is about existence and soul, where Dara asks that the soul is supreme, basically taking from Shankara's Advait philosophy and what was very well entrenched, Wahadat al-Wajud, within the Qadiri order, as well as the Chishti order of Sufism at this point of time. That if there is a pure soul, how does the individual soul, how does that Atma get mixed up with existence? And so Baba Lal gives various interesting metaphors, like the metaphor of alcohol and water. Like alcohol is impure, but if you pour it into the ground, it seeps through the water, merges into the Ganga, and becomes pure water again. Whereas if you take Ganga water and pour alcohol in it, it will become alcoholic water. And so this is how it differentiates between the Atma and the Paramatma. He gives another metaphor that a king is a king when he's on crown. If at night he wanders around, he'll be perceived to be a thief and imprisoned. And similarly, our soul is imprisoned in our body. We are not on the position of our crown. Also gives the metaphor of wood and torch, that a wood is wood until it becomes a torch. The moment there is fire in wood, one piece of torch can light another piece of torch, and so on and so forth. So very interesting offbeat metaphors. And the metaphor of king pops up again and again, also because this C version misses it, but the B version has in great detail where Dara asks about if a Faqir can be a prince, if a prince can be a Faqir, and so on and so forth. So Baba Lal tweaks his answers according to the king that he's meeting. And he says that nobody can meet the king just like that. You need an intermediary. And similarly, you need a Faqir to meet the supreme soul. He also uses the metaphor of oyster and drop of water. Like the oyster comes to the surface, takes in a drop of water and goes deep below. And similarly, a person has to go to the Guru, get his word, and go into the depths of his souls. And here we also see that Dara is very well aware of Hindu scriptures. He talks about 84 wombs, which is, because different kinds of mythologies talk about different things. He says 84, there are versions which say 84 lakh wombs as well, that you have to go through 84 lakh different versions of species to be able to get liberation. And then the next is Faqir's role, some of which has already been covered, but here again, very interesting metaphors that Baba Lal uses. Faqir is like a lotus in water, that like lotus stays on water, that the river may flood, that there may be a huge amount of rainfall, but the lotus will be afloat. It knows how to transcend and stay on the surface. Like oil on tongue doesn't make the tongue greasy. Like a child with a woman is not considered suspicious, but a woman with a young man is considered suspicious. Similarly, a Faqir is always like a child with a pure soul. So no accusation of adultery or anything else can be laid on them. And he says that the Guru is like an uncaring tree that will give its shadow to all. This is to a question where Dara asks, why are Faqirs around then? If they're evolved beings, what are they doing amidst us, unevolved beings, and who will they bestow their benediction on? And he says that a Guru does not have happiness or sorrow. He will give it like a tree, a shadow to anyone who comes and lies down. And so it's a refuge. Or a Guru is like a fish in salty water. He says that a fish in salty water does not imbibe the water, and that is otherwise the body will rot, and that the fish survives through sifting, through filtering, and that is what a Guru does. Some very other interesting questions apart from these are about dreams manifesting. Dara asks, how is it that some dreams manifest? And so Baba Lal talks about the Sattva, Rajas and Tamas, which is well established in the Upanishadic philosophy, the truthful, and the desirous and the lustful. And he also gives the Persian equivalents of this, Nafsi Mutmain, Nafsi Lavama, and Nafsi Amara. And so when it is Nafsi Mutmain or Sattva, when you are in that deep, true state, and what you see during that true state of Sat is what manifests into reality, is what he says. Dara also asked questions about idol worship, because this was a running question throughout the Mughal reign of kings asking these yogis about idol worship. And he says that it's like a girl's dollhouse, like a girl is playing with dolls in her childhood, and when she goes to her own house, the same doll's house becomes her kitchen and her household. And similarly, idol worship is like that. It's a method to practice for the future. It's a method to focus. And lastly, this last slide, I'll try to wind up very quickly. Ishavatar and Jangam, the mobile and the immobile. So this is a disputation on the 5 elements. So the Ishtavar is from the earth, and Jangam, the mobile, is from water. And so trees are from earth, whereas all animals, starting from fish, so this is taking the trajectory of Vishnu's avatars, are mobile. And water dominates the earth, and which of course is metaphorically manifest in all flood narratives as well. And so the mobile creatures dominate the immobile creatures, and that is how living beings, mobile beings dominate the trees and plants, for example. And Dara asks, if everybody is from water, why are humans superior to animals? To which Baba Lal says, humans copulate face to face. So they see each other, they are aware of each other's existence, whereas animals copulate through the posterior, and therefore humans are superior. So these very interesting answers, which are out of the blue. They look up to, human beings look up to Devtas who are from fire, and Devtas look up to Akhtar who are from wind. So this is the clear hierarchy: earth, water, fire, wind. And finally, Ramakam, the one without the house, the word. And so the one who has the word is the supreme. That is the supreme being, the Brahman, the Paramatma. And one more interesting question is about Ramayana. Dara asks that lots of people died in the war between Ram and Ravan. Ram's army came back to life when Ram prayed and Indra bestowed Amrit, but Ravan's army did not. Why? And Baba Lal says that Ram's army was thinking of Ravan when they were fighting, and so when they died, and so they could come back to life, whereas Ravan's army was thinking of Ram when they were fighting. So in their death, they attained salvation, and therefore they cannot be awakened because they have reached a much higher state already. So these are the kind of questions and answers between Baba Lal and Dara Shikoh, and shows the curiosity of Dara Shikoh and also his knowledge of Hindu scriptures, also Baba Lal's knowledge of Islamic scriptures. The interfaith dialogue is quite alive and vibrant at this point of time, that both parties are quite well versed with each other's Urdu, and also because there was a huge culture of translation at this point of time, which we haven't gone into here. The number of texts that Dara Shikoh translated, Yoga Vasishtha, Bhagavad Gita, the 54 Upanishads that I spoke of, etc. And so this is an age where there is Delhi and India, the Mughal Empire is very cosmopolitan and eclectic in terms of knowledge seeking, knowledge production, and this later goes to the West, and this influences the Romantic poets and the German Romantics and so on and so forth, which I would not go into, and I think I'll close the presentation. It's already 20 minutes. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Amit. This is a wonderful presentation. I think it's exactly the type of work that we're trying to understand, particularly the interconnection, right? So just kind of understanding that throughout sort of Indic history, we have this sort of overlapping sacred geographies, ideas that are percolating between faith communities. And in fact, sometimes to even speak about discrete faith communities, might not even be accurate, particularly sort of when we're thinking about sort of vernacular traditions, right? So I think that's something that would be important for us to kind of think through, understanding how these faith traditions are drawing inspiration from each other, how their intellectual traditions are intertwined with each other. I think really reveals a new understanding of sort of history that doesn't give us just these sort of colonial this colonial bifurcation of Hindu and Muslim. So it's really wonderful. Thank you so much for your research.
Thank you so much.
And for joining us today. It's wonderful to see you. So the next presenter that we are going to have today is Dr. Urvashi Pandya, and her presentation is entitled The Poetic Expression of Inner Journey by Imam Begum and Gangasati, a Comparative Study. Of course, most of you all that are here know Dr. Pandya. She's an associate professor and the head of the Department of Gujarati at University of Mumbai for the last 21 years. She was recently awarded a very prestigious research award, the UGC Research Fellowship from 2012 to 2014. She is the author of more than 11 books. She's a poet, editor, researcher. She's done critical translations as well. Many different articles, conferences. We're very honored to have Dr. Pandya with us today. And I will spotlight her for the presentation, and I hope you guys enjoy. All right.
Hello, everyone. Can everyone listen me?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes. Yes. हाँ राजू भाई संभळाय छे.
Urvashi Ben. Yeah, Mr. Akhtar, I would like to correct you on 2 points. That Dr. Urvashi Pandya is not associate professor, but she is professor now, and her experience of teaching in the field of academics is of more than 26 years, and from last 25 years she is working with the University of Mumbai. And she got the UGC Research Award. That's the postdoctoral fellowship for 2 years from the UGC. That you have correctly added to. Thank you, and thanks to allow me for giving this additional information with regards to Dr. Urvashi Pandya's works and experience. Thank you. Now, Dr. Pandya, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for the update.
Thank you, Iqbal. Hello, friends. Good morning and good evening. To begin with, I welcome and honor all the scholar colleagues and participants in this webinar. Today, I am going to present the spiritual work of Gujarati women saint writers Saida Imam Begum and Gangasati. Though I have talked about them previously, but today I am going to focus on some remaining relevant observations. Today, my topic is the poetic expression of inner journey by Imam Begum and Gangasati, a comparative study. The intention is to humbly present a study of philosophical mystic poetry by Saida Imam Begum, who was the last Ginan writer in Ismaili Nizari sect, and the last renowned Gujarati saint Gangasati from Mahapanth Parampara. The historical event of Bhakti movement all over India has completely changed the definition of society, culture, and especially the traditional interpretation of religion and devotion, resulting in the foundation of Sant Parampara or saint tradition in India during the 13th century. On the other hand, the saint tradition or Santmat was the foundation stone for the unique forms, new era, and the sublime philosophy of devotion and spirituality. The tradition of literature of every period has its unique values, identity, and forms. The current social milieu to promote literature differs from time to time. Beyond being bound to each other, human life and literature inspire, nourish, and complement each other. Historically, from the 13th century to around post half of 17th century, in general, had been established as the period of medieval Indian literature. The span of the much of Indian devotional literature in the medieval era has extended till the post half of 19th century. My endeavor is to divide my presentation into three parts. First, life and work of Imam Begum. Second, life and work of Gangasati. And third, the comparative study and analysis of devotional and spiritual experiences and expression of both the saint writers from different spiritual traditions. Saida Imam Begum was from the tradition of Ismaili Nizari sect, and Gangasati from Mahapanth Parampara were engaged in the spiritual journey and the work of social reformation in the ending era of medieval Gujarati literature. Both the women saint writers have carried out their own tradition and are known for the sublime creative philosophical work. Both the writers were engaged in spiritual practice and in expressing the experience of inner journey through their ginans and pad or padrachna or bhajan and social welfare, especially to guide women for the value-based lifestyle and spiritual journey. Saida Imam Begum was born in 1785 in the Kera village of Kutch and died in Karachi in 1866. Saida Imam Begum's mausoleum is located in Karachi. The Pir tradition of Nizari sect in Gujarat started from 1094 AD to 1134 AD during the rule of Siddharth Jaisi of Patan by Pir Sadgur Nuruddin, who is considered as the first writer of Ginan in the subcontinental languages of Imami Ismaili Satpant. Bibi Tahira, commonly known as Saida Imam Begum, was the last known member of Kidwal family and composers of Ginans in India. Historically, the period of 46th Imam Hazrat Maulana Shah Aka Hasan Ali is the establishing period of Saida Imam Begum. Sayyid Hasan Ali Shah was the father of 5 sons and a daughter named Imam Begum. Saida Imam Begum spent most of her life at Thane district near Mumbai in Maharashtra, but was continuously traveling towards Gujarat, Kutch, Kathiawar and Sindh to impart spiritual knowledge and spread the religion, and used to organize religious gathering for Ismaili women in Jamaat Khana. According to the authentic research and historical evidences from 1843 to 1894 have been considered as the period of Gangasati. So there is a difference of 58 years in the birth and 32 years in the death of both the women saint writers. Gangasati was born in a devotee family. She was a only girl child and the eldest among the 5 children of Bhaiji B. Sarvaiya and Rupadima. She married Kasad Singh Gohil, the elder son of the devotee couple Ram Singh Ji Gohil and Bijiba. Panbai, who was her childhood friend, also came with Gangasati at her in-laws' house as a Vadaran. Vadaran means an assistant who accompany the bride when she goes to her in-laws, and later on married Ajuba. Ajuba, the nephew of Kasarsan, and was raised by Gangasati. Kasarsan took Samadhi in 1894 on Poshi Purnima, and Gangasati took Samadhi after 52 days after Kasarsan's Samadhi. Gangasati was raised in a spiritual environment and has a long tradition of her former women saint writers from the Nirgun Sadhana Dhara, the tradition of formless worship of Mahapant, such as Sati Toral, Sati Loyan, Rani Rupande, Lilambai, Liralbai, and Sati Devdande, and many others. Now, after the brief background of Sayyida Imam Begum and Gangasati, I would like to present my observations of their philosophical work in their traditions. If we compare the Padrachnas or Bhajan written by Gangasati and the Ginans by Sayyida Imam Begums, many more important similarities become obvious. The Ginan written by Sayyida Imam Begum and Bhajans or Padrachna of Gangasati contains more ethical teaching, spiritual messages, practice of meditation, mystic philosophy, and guidance to reach metaphysical objectives in the inner mind. Both the saint writers used to recite the mystic knowledge of spirituality through their Ginans and Padrachna or Bhajans in the language that local ordinary folks can understand. Sayyida Imam Begum was the only woman writer in the tradition of Ginan after Bai Budai, and was also known for her piety and knowledge. However, Ajan Bibi from Kera village and wife of Nizari Pir, Gulwani Shah, was also engaged in spiritual practice and social work service. There is a single poetry has been found in Khōjā Vrutant. The poetry is written in Hindustani Sadupadi style. Dhyan ka tamba tumba gurugam bheed lagai anahat jantri aharnis baje surti ginan samai sadhu jantri prem ki vagi hare jati surta sumdhun gaji. The entire tradition of Nirgun Sadhana all over the country is interconnected. We can see the obvious similarities is in most of the traditions of spiritual practice. Both the saint writers have composed and sung their sublime spiritual experience by using musical instruments. Sayyida Imam Begum was known as an accomplished fiddle player and used to play fiddle, means sarangi, while singing her hymns. Gangasati also sung her bhajans with Akhtar. If we observe the establishment period of Sayyida Imam Begum and Gangasati, we can see that both the writers have 900 years long tradition of Nirgun Sadhana, from the Nath Siddhas in 9th and 10th century to Ismaili tradition of 10th and 11th century, and the Santman tradition which came into existence as a result of Bhakti movement all over the country as a background during 13th century. This whole tradition highlights the importance of Guru, the master or Murshid, in the spiritual practice towards the ultimate truth or Brahma Prakash. Sayyida Imam Begum has composed 10 Ginans with total 80 stanzas, which are very beautifully composed and have a notable value in Ginan tradition for its imploring tenderness and meditative intimacy. She has explained the deep love and devotion towards Maula, the intense desire for his didar or darsana, means seeing him, and the experience of immense pure joy of Maula's didar, and the teaching of spirituality in her Ginans through the colloquial language and the language of everyday simplicity. The tradition of Namacharan carried out from Nathasiddha eras is also continued in a work by Imam Begum and Gangasati. Namacharan is the line of verse which indicates the name of writer or his or her guru. Imam Begum used her name as Namacharan. For example, Eji Kahata Imam Begum Suno Mora Bhaiji has been used in her 9 out of 10 Ginans. The name of Murshid and Murid both are used as Namacharan in Gangasati's entire work. Gangasati addressed her beloved friend and daughter-in-law Panbai. For example, today my throat is not well. Then also I want to try. Just Meru todage panjena मन ना डगे पान बाई मरने बांगी पड़े भर मान रे विपत पड़े तो ये पण से नहीं तो हरि रे जनो ना पर मान रे. Sayyida Imam Begum and Gangasati, both the saint writers, talk about the importance of Sadguru, the role of Sadguru in the path of spiritual journey, methodology of the practice of the worshipping formless, the process to achieve the realization of ultimate truth or Brahma Prakash, and the joy of achieving it. The guidance of Sadguru is very important in spiritual path. The spiritual knowledge and an experience of divine light, means Brahma Prakash, is not possible without the guidance and blessings of Sadguru. Sadguru not only leads the sadhak or her murid, but worshipper to the path of spiritual knowledge, but also protects him from the evil element and the hurdles in the path of achieving the Param Satya, Brahma Prakash or ultimate truth. Sayyida Imam Begum has described the importance of Sadguru and has advised for total dedication in her Ginan. Again, I will try to sing. Aaye rahe maan, ab to rahim karoge. जी तना माना धना गुरु को अर्पण कीजे, तना माना धना गुरु को अर्पण कीजे, गिनाने गिनाने गिनाना अब रहेमा करोगे रहेमा. In other Ginan, Sayyida Imam Begum has explained the immense joy of getting Sadguru. Eji Sadguru Malya Mune Aj Anand Pami Hu, Sadguru Malya Tyare Dhokha Jatadya, Sarve Sarya Dasina Kaj. Gangasati has also explained the sublime characteristic of Sadguru who lead his Sishya or Shagid or Murid to experience the divine joy. Gangasati advises to the sadhak to obey Sadguru and his order with complete dedication. Silvant sadhune vare vare na mere, jena badle nahi vart maan re, itni vruti jeni sadaye nirmadi re, jene Maharaj thaye mehrban re. By using the word vare vare namire, Gangasati means to follow Sadguru permanently with total dedication. Silvan Sadhu, benevolent saint, never gets upset or changed, but always remains steady and calm in any situation or time, without letting in worldly affair affecting him. Further, she explained that the Sadguru guides and motivates his follower to the path of realization of ultimate truth is having a pure heart and mind without hatred or way too much affection for any individual. He loves every single being, every single being in the world. There is no difference in his words and deeds. The only aim of his life is to work for the betterment of others and follow the value-based holy life. Sorry. This reference, Gangasati says, જેને શત્રુને મિત્ર નહીં ઉરમારે, જેના પરમાર રથમાં પ્રીત રે, મન વાણીમાં તો એ મન વચનની વાણીમાં એ ચાલે ને રૂઢી પાડે એવી રીતે રે. Gangasati clearly instructs the sadhak that one has to earn the blessings of Sadguru who is able to help him to get rid of the worldly pain. She says, संग तू करो तो तमे एवानी कर जोरे पानबाई जे उतारे तमने भव पार रे. गंगा सती एम बोलिया सांभळ जो पानबाई जेने वचनू साथे वे वार रे. Benevolent saint is away from all worldly desire and free from pain and worries. He is active only in worship or vachan, shabad or sumiran. While chanting shabad, sadhak reaches the sublime stage which connects him with anahat nad, which also known as anhat nad in Kabir or Santmat. The methodology and process of inner journey is same in all the tradition of worshipping the formless. The followers of Ismaili Nizari Pir tradition, Sufi tradition, Mahapanth Parampara, Nizari Satpanth Parampara, and Santmat. And even in Ravibana tradition follow the same methodology of spiritual practice. In Sufis, there are 4 stages in the spiritual journey: Shariat, Tariqat, Hakikat, and Marifat. And the various stages of spiritual practice of inner journey in the about said traditions are same but with different terminologies. The inner journey and different terms or magnificent experiences is follow the same. Actually, I have explained all this different terminology and same stages of the spiritual methodology with different terminologies in my paper, but due to time limit, I skip here, and whoever has interest, I can pass my paper to them. As I have stated previously, we can find many similarities in the methodology and process of the practices to achieve the realization of ultimate truth in Ismaili Pir tradition. The final destination in the discipline of the Pirs is realization of the illumination of Brahma, the cosmos. Sadguru or Maulana leads sadhak to the ultimate truth or Brahma Prakash. Imam Begum described the secret ritual of the inner journey to the illumination of Brahma Prakash. There is also tradition of the secret rituals in Mahapanth Parampara, Ghatpat Sthapna and
Hello?
all that. Huh?
What happened?
No, nothing. My voice is not coming. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Iqbal bhai?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
Are you? Yeah. Please wrap up if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, now I will take only 5 to 7 minutes. The final destination in the disciplines of the Pirs is realization of the illumination of Brahma, the cosmos. Sadguru or Maulana leads sadhak to the ultimate truth or Brahma Prakash. Imam Begum describes the secret ritual of the inner journey to the Brahma Prakash in Pir tradition in one of her ginans. एजी जपो पीरसानु नाम जपता रहिए, एजी मूल कमल भाई थिर करी राखो, नाभि कमल को जगाए. Here Saida Begum described, I am not going to read entire Ginan. Here, Sayyida Imam Begum described the complete details of inner journey from the beginning till end. Eji japo pir shahnu naam japta rahiye. Shabad, Jap, Naam, Sumiran, Jikar is the beginning and most important element of the spiritual path towards ultimate truth. Pir Shahnu Naam indicates the name of Guru, Bachan, Bol, which has been given from Murshid, from the master to Murid or the follower. Naam Jap or chanting is the main supporting medium in the method of meditation and helping in the direction of achieving Abhedanubhuti. Abhedanubhuti means the oneness of consciousness and ultimate truth, means the oneness of Chaitanya and Anahat Nad. मूल कमल भाई थीर करी राखो जी, नाभि कमल को जगाए ये जी सतगुरु शब्द का वाजा बजाइए, सुरति को सुहाग चढ़ाइए. To explain the whole process of spiritual practice from the beginning to end, in this Ginan, Imam Begum uses the terminologies and method of yoga sadhana such as Mool Kamal and Nabhi, which indicate the system of various layers known as chakras in the Sukshma Deha, micro body or soul of human existence, or the seeker. There are total 6 chakras. Muladhar means root chakra. Second Swadhisthana means solar chakra. Third Manipur means energy chakra. 4 Visuddhi means throat chakra. 4 Agnya chakra means third eyes. And 6. And all above of this Sahasradal Kamal is located. There is a point between the 2 eyebrows, the place of Agnya Chakra, which is the last connecting place of Ingla, Pingla and Sushumna Nadis. The seeker achieves Anahat Nad at this place. Anahat Nad makes the seeker free from worldly illusions. Anahat Nad is also known by the term Pranava in Upanishad. एजी सदगुरु शब्द का वाजा बजाइए, सुरति को सुहाग चढ़ाइए. सुरति derives from surat, means completely involvement, and surti ko suhag chadaiye indicates the process of awakening the conscious mind to reach Anahat Nad. Anahat Nad is the result of inner journey of the seeker to achieve oneness with ultimate truth. Pir Shams calls it Brahma Prakash, and Mahapanth in Mahapanth Satmat Kabir Panth calls it Anahat or Anhad Nad. Anahat Nad is a divine sound which continuously echoes in the whole cosmos. Both the writers considered the Sabad or Namjap Jikar as an essential elements in this entire process or entire practice. Gangasati, similarly, Gangasati also uses this terminology and the method of yoga sadhana to describe the spiritual journey. Dabi re ingala ne jamani re pingala, rakhu sar bhedma dhyan re, surya ma khavu ne chandrama jal pીવું, એમ કાયમ લેવું વ્રત પાન રે. એવી રે નાડી શુદ્ધ થયા પછી અભ્યાસ જાગે ને, નક્કી જાણવું નિરાધાર રે. ગંગા સતી એમ બોલિયા રે પાનભાઈ, આ તો ખેલ છે અગમ અપાર રે. Gangasati talks about Anhat Nad, which leads to the ultimate truth or Brahma Prakash. According to Mahapan tradition, Gangasati preaches the seeker to reach the ultimate light by awakening the Ingla, Pingla and Sushumna Nadis. And similarly, only 2 to 3 minutes I will take. Imam Begum describes the mystic experience by using the term Agam Apar Khel. Sayyida Imam Begum and Gangasati both talk about the inseparable relationship of the mentor and mentee, Murshid and Murid, or Guru and or Shishya. Both are incomplete without each other. यहाँ कबीर मुझे याद I remember कबीर, जब मैं था तब हरि नहीं, हरि है अब हम नहीं, प्रेम गली अति सांकरी, तामे दोना समाई. Both the saint writers point out the duties and responsibilities of the mentee during his or her path of inner journey. Explaining this fact, Sayyida Imam Begum says, "Uth jaag man mera, tu kahe ko sota hai." Again, I remember Kabir here. तेरा मेरा मनवा कैसे एक होई रे, तू कहता है जागत, मैं कहता हूँ जागत रहियो, तू रहता है सोई रे, तेरा मेरा मनवा कैसे एक होई रे. Gangasati also talk about the same mindfulness and awareness in one of her bhajanas with the symbol of this beautiful symbol, the symbol of an act of arranging the pulse in a thread during the single moment of thunder lightning. Gangasati says, "Bijdi ne chamkare, motida paro wo panbai, achanak andhara tha shere, jyotire jyotama divso, बह्यारे जासे ने 21,600 ने आकाशे में." Gangasati instruct the seeker to વીજળી ને ચમકારે મોતીડા પરવો. It means to arrange the pulse in thread within the moment of thunder lightning. 21,600 means the figure 21,600 indicates the number of inhalations and exhalations we take in 24 hours, which ends one day. The thunder lightning is the symbol of the moment of realization of Anahatnad and to achieve the oneness with it. Pearl is the soul, and pearl is the symbol of soul, and the thread is to arrange the soul in the Anahatnad with the enlightenment of realization of ultimate truth, which is thunder lightning. Further, Gangabai says, "Nirmal thaine aavo मैदानमा पानबाई, जानी लियो जीवनी जातरे, सजाती भी जातीनी, जुगती बताऊने, बीबे पाड़ी दऊं रूड़ी भातरे." વીજળી પિંડ બ્રહ્માંડથી પર છે ગુરુ પાનબાઈ, તેનો દેખાડું તમને દેશ રે. ગંગા સતી એમ બોલ્યા, સાંભળજો પાનબાઈ, ત્યાં નહીં જરીએ માયાનો લેશ રે. However, this kind of similarities are common in the devotional spiritual tradition in medieval literature. On the other hand, we can find the similar gestural terminologies and interpretation of the mystic spiritual practice in the literature of Sayyida Imam Begum and Gangasati. To conclude, the spiritual practice of Sayyida Imam Begum and Gangasati, their experiences of Anhatnad, and to achieve realization of ultimate truth, Abhidanubhuti, their sublime poetic expressions, as well as the society-oriented work, is the golden page of medieval Gujarati saint literature. And I would like to recite some 2-3 verses of Kabir in this connection, Abhidanubhuti. लाली मेरे लाल की जित देखो तित लाल, लाली देखन मैं गई मैं भी हो गई लाल. And one place Kabir says, उड़ा बबूला प्रेम का, तिनका उड़ा आकाश, तिनका तिनके से मिला, तिनका तिनके पास. And I would like to say, my Brahm, नैना अंदर आओ तू, नैन झांपी तो ही ले, ना मैं देखूं और को, ना तुझको देखन दे. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Urvashi Ben. We really appreciate it. It's a very interesting comparison of the literature tradition. So I really appreciate that. So the next scholar and the final scholar of our program, last but not least, we have Professor Vidya Vencatesan. So she is a professor in the Department of French. Give me 1 minute.
Not a problem.
Yeah, hold on 1 minute. Okay, see me. All right. So Professor Vidya Vencatesan is a professor in the Department of French and director of the Center for European Studies at the University of Mumbai. She did her doctorate in the comparative study of the Valmiki Ramayana and the French epic, The Cycle of William of Orange at Paris 3 in the Bonne Nouvelle. She's a comparative scholar interested in world epic traditions, folk tales, and tellers besides Francophone literature and literary translation. She has many national and international publications in French and English. She's the editor-in-chief of India's only Francophone peer-reviewed journal, Indian Synergy, sponsored by the Ministry of Higher Education and Research France. She is the local coordinator of the Erasmus Mundus Master CLE program, which is a consortium of 5 European and non-European universities for Asia. She's translated Jawab Akhtar's Poetic of Other Worlds by Janus Publications. She has 2 more works. She has numerous international awards. Of those, she is a Knight of the Order of Academic Palms in France, as well as the Knight of sort of Arts and Letters. And she is also has an international award from Italy, a Knight of the Star of Italy. So we're very honored to have her. And the title of her talk today is going to be The Weddings in the Ramayana Tradition, a Sociocultural Archive. So I'll turn it over to her. And then after she's finished, then we'll have a short discussion and everyone can sort of ask their questions, if that's okay. All right, so I am now going to spotlight Professor Vidya, and please begin.
Hi. Weddings in the Ramayana tradition.
Hello.
Yeah.
Has she started?
Yes, yes.
You started, yeah. So would you mind just waiting? Talk?
Yes,
No, I don't want to interfere or interview. I just wanted to request you that could you please give us a few seconds to share our observation with regards to Dr. Urvashi Pandya's paper at the end of the entire session?
Of course, yeah. Absolutely.
Or should I speak now?
No, after.
No, whenever you will say, I'm absolutely fine if you will allow me to speak at the end of the entire session. Then let the other speakers finish their papers, and then I will give my observation at the end of the session.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
I'm absolutely fine with whatever you say.
Yeah, so we will do it after
Okay,
Dr. Vidya's presentation. Yeah. At
Yeah.
the end of the session. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in the international webinar organized by the University of Florida International University and the University of Mumbai, entitled Comparative Indic Sacred Literatures, Comparisons, Connections, Convergences. My paper invites you to delve into the Ramayana tradition and explore the theme of the Ram-Sita wedding as imagined by 4 poets, Valmiki, Kamban, Tulsidas, and Kritibash Ojha. India is a land of plurality, many languages, many religions, many Ramayanas. The renowned folklorist A.K. Ramanujan believed that we have as many as 300 recorded Ramayanas. The Ur text, the Ramayana composed by Valmiki in Sanskrit, is a literary masterpiece, Adi Kavya, and the 3 other Ramayanas are Bhakti texts. I will begin by examining the very first Ram-Sita wedding in Sanskrit and then compare it with the 3 other Ramayanas as imagined by Kamban in Tamil, Kritibash Ojha in Bengali, and Tulsidas in Avadhi. I believe that the common connection is bhakti, or devotion to a personal god, and the convergence is the specificity of bhakti literature, which allows each of these poets to personalize the story, individualize the characters, and embed it in a completely different linguistic, geographical, social, and cultural location. We begin. At the end of the Balakanda of the Valmiki Ramayana, Vishwamitra invites Ram and Lakshman to Mithila to witness a great sacrifice being performed by Janak and to see an extraordinary bow in his possession. The next 13 verses describe this divine bow worshipped by Janaka's family for generations. It is at this moment that Sita is mentioned for the first time as Janaka's foster daughter, found in a furrow, and that she will be Virya Shulka, or prize of valor. Tesham Varayatam Kanyam Sarvesham Prithvikshitam Virya Shulketi Bhagavan Nadadami Sutamaham. I will only give my daughter in marriage to a man who wins her as a prize of valor. Yadyasya Dhanusho Ramaha Puryadaropanam Mune Sutamayo Nijam Sitam Dadhyam Dashratheraham. It is now that Janaka comes up with a formal proposal of marriage. If Rama strings the bow, I'll give him Sita in marriage. Then the bow is brought in a chest mounted on 8 wheels and drawn by 5,000 well-built men. Once more, a very solemn introduction about the bow is made. Rama lifts the bow, strings it quite effortlessly, and even proceeds to break it. Janaka is overjoyed, Dashrath is invited, and the marriage is announced. Sita will marry Rama, Urmila Lakshman, Mandavi Bharata, and Shrutakirti will wed Shatrughna. The two family pedigrees are recited by the family priests. Dashratha goes on to perform the Samavartana ceremony to mark the end of the Brahmacharya ashrama of his sons, followed by Nandi Shraddha. The only other important invitee mentioned by the poet Valmiki is Yudhajit, Kaikeyi's brother and Bharata's maternal uncle. The queens are not present at the wedding. Valmiki now takes us to the sacrificial altar that has been prepared and decorated with sandal paste and flowers, which he describes in 4 long verses. We see golden plates and jars of different colors containing grains. Shallow earthen cups are full of sprouts. There are vessels containing incense sticks, large conches, specific wooden ladles called sruk and sruvas, vessels brimming with water, vessels full of parched grain, cups of akshata, etc. Darba grass is strewn all over the altar and sacred hymns are being recited. Sita is brought in and we meet her for the first time as Sarvalankara Bhushita, or she who is beautifully adorned. And Janaka gives her away, reciting the hymn that even today, Hindu fathers in a traditional wedding recite when they give their daughters away. Iyam Sita Mamasuta Sahadharmacharitava Pratichachainam Bhadram Te Panim Grihishva Panina Pativrata Mahabhaga Chaye Vanugata Sada. This is my daughter, by name Sita. She will be your companion in the path of righteousness or dharma. Please take her hand in your own and accept her. May good betide you. She is highly fortunate and will remain exclusively devoted to you. She will follow you forever, faithful and inseparable as your own shadow. The brides and the grooms circumambulate the sacred fire. Janaka gives a large dowry of cows, horses, elephants, chariots, infantry, cavalry, servants, silken textiles, carpets, gold, silver, corals, pearls, and I quote from the text. I draw your attention to the following points. Valmiki's Ram-Sita wedding in Sanskrit is an arranged marriage, the coming together of two noble families. Rama is an epic hero. The Ramayana is a song of action, the tale of a brave warrior who vanquished demons, crossed the ocean, and retrieved his wife from the clutches of the all-powerful 10-headed Ravana. His marriage to Sita showcases his skill at archery. Sita is his prize of valor. Rama is a man of action and daring deeds, not emotion or feeling. Basic virile emotions like anger at the Rakshasas, sorrow when his father dies, empathy for Sugriva, compassion for Vibhishana are noticed, but eros or Shrangara escapes him. The main focus of the wedding is the bow, the Shiv Dhanush, and the sacrificial altar. Rituals like Samavartana, Nandi Shraddha, Kanyadana, Saptapadi are mentioned. The wedding finery of the bride and the groom, other festivities, the wedding banquet find no place here. Women are objects of exchange. Neither the bride's mothers nor the bridegroom's mothers are present. So that was the Ur-text, the Valmikian model of the Ram-Sita wedding. Let's now skip over the millennium to meet Kambanatalvar in the rich Tamil country of the 12th century, where the Cholas reigned. He wrote Rama's story in 12,116 verses and called it Ramavataram, or the incarnation of Rama. Kamban lived in one of the greatest flowerings of culture, comparable to the Renaissance in Europe and the golden age of Greece or Rome. If Valmiki is Adi Kavi, or the primordial poet, Kamban is Kavi Chakravarti, or the universal monarch of poets. Kamban describes the Ram-Sita wedding in 14 padalams or chapters. As the title of his work suggests, it is bhakti poetry, and Rama, an incarnation, one of the Dashavataras. Contrary to the Valmiki Ramayana, the Ramavataram allows Ram and Sita the heady experience of premarital love. Rama sees Sita standing in the Kannimadam, where unmarried girls live, a part of the palace. Rama notices that she has the luminosity of gold. She smells like flowers. She is sweet as the honey sipped by the bees from the most fragrant of blooms. She tastes like good poetry that combines both form and content. Their eyes meet, and it is love at first sight. From that moment onwards, they are one life in two bodies. The temporary separation brought about by an avatara is done away with in a flash. At such a moment, speech becomes irrelevant. Karungadal Palliyil Kalavi Neengipol Pirindavar Koodinal Peshal Vendumo. Is speech required? What follows is a detailed description of Sita as a lovelorn heroine. Rama also pines for her. Later on, when Rama lifts the bow effortlessly, Kamban does not describe the act of breaking the bow in any detail, but succinctly says, Yeduttadu kandanar, yittrathu kettar. Some saw him lift it, and others heard a thundering crash. The happiness of the moment is described by the character of Neelamalai, a unique Kamban cameo. Sita's youngest Sakhi is dispatched to watch the breaking of the bow with express instructions to report back. She sees that event and she rushes back to convey the good news, but is so overwhelmed that she is forgetful of protocol and even good manners. She enters the room without bowing to Sita. She sings, she dances, she forgets to pay her respects, and finally stands there dumbfounded, and only when she is asked does she come to her senses. The bride and the groom wear the most elaborate jewelry. The girdle, or the kamarpatti, patta, meant for the bride's waist, leads to some confusion. Since Sita's waist is so slender, her Sakhis don't know if she really has one. Some says she has a waist, and others insist she doesn't have a waist. And the poet says that this is like the eternal debate in humanity, whether God exists or he doesn't. Sita's face is brushed with shimmering facial powder. Her lips are lined with lipstick, and her breasts are tattooed with sandalwood paste. How is Kamban's poem different from the Valmikian model? Broadly, we have 5 points. Rama and Sita fall in love before marriage and pine for each other. Neelamalai, the young Sakhi, is a character invented by Kamban and unique to Ramavataram. 2 more rituals are added to the Valmikian wedding, the Panigrahana and the sighting of the Arundhati star. lists of jewelry for men and women, clothing, hairstyles, the art of makeup are all dwelt upon in certain detail. Descriptions of the crowds that flocked to see Ram and Sita at the wedding seem to be a very important feature of this wedding. I believe that Kamban is called Kambanatalvar as a fervent Vaishnava. Darshana, or feasting his eyes on his Ishta Devata and Devi, Mahavishnu and Mahalakshmi, presently incarnated as Ram and Sita, is his pride and privilege. Alankara, or adorning his god with rare silks and precious stones, is part of his puja. In fact, Neelamalai, I state, is a manifestation of the entire mood, Etadamma, of Sita's nervousness, the happiness of Mithila, and let's say the incarnation of what happens when joy bubbles over, overriding reason, breaking rules, and robbing the person of speech. When Kamban writes in Tamil in the 12th century, he draws richly from earlier Tamil epics, Sangam poetry, folk motives, hymns of the Alvars and Nayanmars, and of course Valmiki. His Rama, that is Kamban's Rama, is a romantic hero. His valor does not detract from his tender heart. His Tamil, Kamban's Tamil, is embedded in a highly evolved culture steeped in bhakti. We shall now move on to another region in India, another cultural hub, Bengal. The best known Ramayana in this region is the Krishtibhashi Ramayana, written in the 15th century by Kritibhash Khōjā, a learned Pandit from the village of Kulea, Nadia district, West Bengal. The Kritibhashi Ramayana makes gods human. They don't seem to remember their divine status or supernatural powers. Sita, who has seen Rama as he goes to pick up the bow and string it, is keen to marry him. She is worried the bow may be too heavy for his slender frame and prays that the gods grant her wish to marry him. When Vishwamitra goes to Ayodhya to convey the happy tidings that Rama is to be married, people who saw him leave with Ram and Lakshman as young princes and return alone fear the worst. They think Ram and Lakshman have been killed by the Rakshasas, and a period of mourning starts. The queens are completely desolate. Dashratha is quite close to death. Only then is the malentendu cleared, and they all set out for Mithila. And Kausalya is any bridegroom's mother. She frets over details. She's worried she has not taken enough turmeric for the Gai Holud ceremony. The groom's party is greeted with lakes of ghee and milk, mountains of rice and deserts. It looks like the entire earth was covered with food, says Kritibhash. Hundreds and hundreds of casserole cook limitless food. Hospitable requests ring out from every nook and corner. Eat well, have some more, you can hear. Janaka himself welcomes the groom's party. The menu includes milk, yogurt, bananas, kheer, ghee, shondish, and the traditional Bengali pan, which contains camphor. Ram is the traditional groom, Bengali groom, who wears the topur and is carried in a palanquin, which is again decorated very lovingly. There is a lot of confusion as it happens at weddings, and as the Bharat enters the hall, Kritibhash says that there was some amount of pushing and shoving and what he calls thela theli, and a few friendly abuses were of course exchanged, and he calls this gala gali. A quick comparative table tells us that Kritibhash has included new rituals like Varana Vidhana, the thread ceremony of the grooms, Gai Holud, which is the Haldi ceremony which is performed at a Bengali wedding even today, the Shoshti Puja, the Bidai, and so on. Sita becomes the traditional Bengali bow. Her forehead is covered in elaborate designs. She wears karnaful in her ears. She has different kinds of bangles, kangan, balis, and so on. And Ram is her typical Bengali groom. Food and beverages are lovingly listed, and hospitality is a fine art. Traditional games are played by the bride and groom to break the ice, and there is much light banter and witty repartee. Janaka is a heartbroken father bidding goodbye to his beloved daughters and showering them with tender kisses. Kritivashi Ramayana is a bhakti kavya too, but this poem is neither epic nor romantic. It is a very naturalistic description and poem set in rural Bengal. The divinities become human. Realistic detailing makes the story rich in emotion, warm and totally relatable. Here, the bhakta or the devotee does not try to choose any of the 4 paths to salvation: Samipya, Salokya, Sayujya, Sashti. He does not want to become closer to God by dressing like him or living in his world. He brings God to earth. He embeds him in his reality, which is a Bengali reality, and sings his stories and follows the path of Kirtanam that is mentioned in as one of the Navavidha Bhaktis in the Narada Bhakti Sutra. From the Bay of Bengal, we now hurry along to the Gangetic Plain in the 16th century, where another great poet, Goswami Tulsidas, wrote Rama's story, or the Ramcharitmanas, in Abhi in 10,000 verses. He employed a poetic form called the Chaupai, or 4 verses strung together. I will spare you a detailed analysis of the Manas wedding and go straight to the comparative table. Tulsidasa's Ram and Sita also fall in love before marriage, and their meeting in the garden is captivating in its tenderness, badinage, light banter, and mischief. They pine for each other in separation too. Tulsi's Ram is very aware of his divinity. Sita in front of him is herself a bhakta. She seeks the path of Sayujya, or union with the Lord as a beloved. For example, she does not touch Ram's feet because she remembers that the touch of his feet had changed a stone into a woman, Ahalya. She gazes on him so struck with his beauty that she forgets to garland him and has to be prodded by a Sakhi in the Varmala ceremony. But some of the most interesting aspects of, and which sort of where he departs from Valmiki, is in the character of Sunaina Devi, who is imagined as Sita's adopted mother. Sita is usually known as Bhumija, daughter of the earth, because she's a foundling in the furrow. But here Janak has a wife and her name is Sunaina Devi. And she, like any mother of a daughter of marriageable age, is very worried the girl will never get married because her husband has laid impossible conditions. I quote, and she says that, you know, he's asking a young man to break a bow. And how does she talk of this bow? Ravana bana chua nahi chapa, hare sakal bhupa karidapa, so dhanu raj kuvar kar dehi, bal maral ki mandar lehi. The bow that Ravan and Banasur could not touch, that all the arrogant kings lost to, that bow is being handed over to this young prince. Since when have baby swans or cygnets lifted the Mandara mountain? Neither Valmiki, nor Kamban, nor Kritibas ever imagined that Sita could have a mother, and a very worried one at that. Similarly, Tulsidasa's Janak goes one step further than Kritivasa's Janak. He's not just a loving father, but the poet says that Janak, who is supposed to be a Rajarshi, who is an image of spiritual detachment and wisdom, when it comes to Sita, is as attached as only attached can get. What does he do? Look at this beautiful scene. Siya bilo ki dhirata bhagi, rahe kahavat param biragi. Leen hi raya urlai janaki, mitti maha marjad jnanaki. He says that This here is a man who's supposed to be a Rajarshi, the treasure chest of wisdom, the epitome of a detachment. And here he is pulling Sita into his arms and kissing her. He walks behind her doli till it reaches the frontiers of Ayodhya. Janaka remains a remote and austere figure of the Rajarshi in Valmiki and Kamban. Here, he is the father of a bride, a deeply devoted father. Lakshman of Ramcharitmanas is a proverbial angry young man, impudent, impulsive, reactive, who only Rama can rein in. This, for me, is one of Tulsidasa's greatest contributions. Valmiki gives us a clue about Lakshmana's irascible temperament, but Tulsidas seems to have taken that clue, or that hint, and built it into a leitmotif of Lakshmana's character. The wedding banquet is mentioned as lavish catering to the 6 basic tastes, Shadruchi. Women sing songs during the meal, both parties make fun of each other, a practice still common today. But when you compare this with the detailed menu of Kritibas, you know why Bengali Mishti is still rules the world today. Tulsidasa's Bhakti Kavya is full of drama, charged with energy, bright colors. Gods and humans inhabit the same space, share the same emotions. Gods attend the Ram-Sita wedding. Goddesses disguise themselves as Sita's bridesmaids. We have compared 4 Ramayana traditions and we have observed that the common connection is bhakti, or devotion to a personal god. In conclusion, I would like to point out that the convergence we notice is in the specificity of the bhakti tradition, which speaks to the divine with this imperiousness, sensuality, familiarity, hitherto unheard of. There is resonance of joy, freedom, a visceral quality of unabashed eroticism, the celebration of embodiment, the joy of incarnation. In choosing to tell Rama's story in his own language, be it Tamil, Bengali, or Avdi, the poet has made some fundamental shifts in the paradigm. There are unbridled departures from the perfected standards of orthodoxy. The Bhakti poet breaks the strictures of tradition, mocks ritualistic practice and its detached practitioners. He is passionate, emotive. His poetry is unmediated by class and by gender. The body is acknowledged as a wonderful instrument, the very basis of a spiritual journey. Bhakti returns man to the world of men, makes gods human, bearing a striking resemblance to the worshipper. The root of the noun bhakti is bhajat, which is to partake of, obtain a share of, enjoy, possess, experience, suffer. The bhakti poet therefore carves out a part of the divinity for himself, enjoys a personal relationship, and experiences him deeply. Bhakta, according to the Sanskrit dictionary, means both devotee and food. So the love of the personal God also nourishes and nurtures the body and the soul of the devotee. While the ascetic walks away from the material form, saguna, to the formless, nirguna, the bhakta revels in the body, humanizes God, sings him lullabies, gets him married. Doxa, rhetoric, intellectual gymnastics of the classical Sanskrit tradition, which define, delineate, categorize, classify, distinguish the sacred from the profane, the erotic from the spiritual, are rejected summarily in favor of resonance, merging, conflation, and convergence to attain the universal truth. Thank you very much for your very patient hearing. I think I stuck to my time.
Excellent job. Thank you so much, Vidya. It's really a remarkable presentation, especially your mastery over all these languages was absolutely remarkable. I think it gives a very good comparative flavor. And particularly, I think one of the things that even in my own research I really enjoy is looking at not only the regional traditions, but also sort of the Indo-European versus the Dravidian, and sort of seeing
right.
sort of the, each of them are their own civilizations in a way on the same subcontinent.
Absolutely.
And so just sort of seeing really the comparative study was amazing. So thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate it. Wonderful. We have there's a Tamil professor I work with, Professor George Hart, who used to be the Tamil chair.
Oops, he's my god.
Okay.
If you can tell him that there's a devotee in India, there is a bhakta.
Okay, all right. Now I'll share your
read each and every word he ever wrote.
Okay, all right. Yeah, he's really remarkable. So he's been helping with some Tamil translations of text. So I'll definitely share his video with you. Yeah.
Please do. Please do. Okay. I'd be very grateful.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So what I'll do now is I will open it up for discussion. So if anybody would like to unmute yourself, and I know the previous gentleman, the professor, if you would like to unmute yourself and maybe give a few comments. I don't know if he's still on or not. Here, Purvayan, Professor Purvayan, I think. If you'd like to say a few words.
Yeah. But could you please allow me to make my observations at the end of the session with regards to both the papers, Dr. Urvashi Pandya's as well as Dr. Vidya's, because I have some very interesting observations which I would like to present in a few seconds. But let the other speaker in, and I'll speak at the end of the entire session so that there should not be a gap. Okay. You know, you can invite the next speaker, and Vidya Madam would also, like to hear something from me.
Right. So there's no more speakers. So we are finished with the panel. So you are most welcome to talk. Yeah. Yeah. So.
Oh, really?
Yes. We're done with the panel. So please, if you'd like to say whatever you like.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. Okay, then can I now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Now, yeah. With regards to with regards to Dr. Urvashi Pandya's paper, she presented a paper of comparative study of two great poets from medieval literature. With regards to Gangasati's works, first of all, let me just give this information that in most of her works, she has mentioned a name of Panbai. Okay. Now this Panbai, as most of the scholars of medieval Gujarati literature wrongly mentioned and identify as the daughter-in-law of Gangasati, which is a wrong notion. Like the one which Urvashi Madam has referred for more than twice, like Vijaline Chamkade Motida Parovu Panbai Achanak Andhara Thai. So that Panbai here is a character, and Panbai is not a daughter-in-law, but she is a disciple. Number one. Number two, interestingly, we have only one, I repeat, only one book written in Gujarati language which gives the historical and correct details and information about the life and time of Gangasati, and that book is written by a retired IPS officer, Majboot Singh Jadeja, who was retired from the Gujarat government as the Inspector General of Police Prisons in 97-96. And he belongs to the same place called Samadhyala. Samadhyala is a village in Saurashtra where Gangasati belongs to. So whatever she has said in most of her works is a dialogue between a character called Panbai and Gangasati. So the so-called scholars understood that Panbai is the daughter-in-law and Gangasati is the mother-in-law who is taking the spiritual lessons to Panbai, which is wrong information. Our great scholar Balawan Jani has also wrote that Panbai was the daughter-in-law. They were not daughter-in-law and mother-in-law. So this is something which we should remember, that whenever we refer to Gangasati, her life and time, the only book is the Gangasati Jivan and Jivan Charita. That is the title of the book written by the IPS officer Madhut Singh Jadeja. All other books are giving all wrong information about the time, life, village, etc. So this is number one. Number two, that most of her pads and her poems have been composed by various Gujarati music composers, and some of the composers from the Akashwani Rajkot Kendra. They have, most of the music composers have used the Sandhi Prakash ragas, means those the ragas from Hindustani classical music which are being used to sing or play in the twilight times, and either in the early morning or at the time of sunset. That's a twilight time. So that this time is also linked with the musical compositions of Gangasati's works. Number three, the Brahma Gyan, Brahma Prakash, Anahat Nath, etc. Whatever Gangasati has, preached in her works is she has done in a very simple and very popular manner, which gives us an indication that she was a person with some inbuilt insight, that if you want to reach the mass, the hearts of mass, then you have to use the simple manner to share or to preach any mystic or mysterious thing, and Gangasati has done this in a fabulous manner. This is with regards to Dr. Urvashi Pandya's paper on a comparative study of Panbai and the Begum. Now, over to Dr. Vidya's paper. It was also very interesting, which she has referred A.K. Ramanujan's very controversial, so-called controversial collection, 300 Ramayanas, which was there in the Delhi University's syllabus, and the ABVP and other right-wing associations have agitated. They were so agitated that ultimately we were bound to remove that book from our syllabi. It's very, very interesting study. So Ramayana has a huge, I can say it's a global footprint. If you go to any, country of Southeast Asia like Indonesia, Bali, Malaysia, India, Sri Lanka. So the largest part of the global footprint of Ramayana is in the Asian countries, particularly in the Indian subcontinent. Ram is a tragic hero as well as a romantic hero, as well as a warrior hero, as Dr. Vidya has rightly, referred with Kamban and the Bengali version of Ramayana. But here I have something to say regarding Urmila, the character which Vidya ma'am has referred to, that she got married to Lakshman. It's a popular character that she was waiting on the doorstep for all 14 years, the entire duration of the exile of Rama and Lakshmana. But most of the Indian historian from the ancient history, including Professor Upinder Kaur and Professor Hemant Dave, see that Urmila is a projected character which is not there in original Valmiki Ramayana, which has been added by some unknown people, because when Ramayana became a popular epic and a public epic, someone has inserted or someone has added this character into the original story. The authenticate version, which has been published by the School of Oriental Studies by the MS University of Baroda, has no mention of Urmila. So the other characters are also like that, but there is no much controversy about the character of Shutakirti and the other characters. But particularly Urmila's character is the one which is always under the radar, because it is not found in the original Valmiki Ramayana. And whatever Madam told about the Bengali tradition is true, and I agreed to her observations with regards to the Bengali version of Ramayana, that a popular version and all the customary practice of abiding, how abiding is taking place in that part of the country, I mean the eastern India, but it's very similar to the western part of the country also. And combines Ramayana, I love combines Ramayana. It is the most interesting book and interesting work on the Ramayana. But I would like to request to Dr. Vidya that if she can, throw some light on the character of Urmila, if she has, come across any kind of, uh, statements or any kind of findings about the character of Urmila.
May I speak?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your comments. It's always a pleasure to have feedback. And now let's begin with the fact that there is a school of thought that believes the entire Balakanda is an accretion. Okay, so we start with accretions, the entire this thing, and we find it quite common in the French epic too. When a certain story becomes popular, they invent a Balakanda. The equivalent in French, medieval French, would be enfance, and they invent it. So there must have been an original text, a set of songs, because I believe it's from the oral that we go to the written. And those songs must have become popular, and then characters came about. The Oriental, the Bori edition says that they do not recognize Sita, they do not recognize this thing. Even in the other version, which is the Gorakhpur edition, which I use, there is only a very single mention of these three other sisters. And so Urmila, Mandavi, and Shrutakirti. Now, coming to the controversy of this character, I wouldn't call it a controversy. I would say that actually it is Maithili Sharan Gupt in Saket who takes up this character and makes her into a very, very beautiful and interesting person. I think that as a poet goes along, like I said, there is the Ur text, and like Kamban invented Neelamalai, like Tulsidas imagined Sunaina Devi. Similarly, there has been no poet so far, at least in the Bhakti movement, who has spoken about Urmila. But yes, the Urmila in Saket by Maithili Sharan Gupt is an exquisite piece of poetry. So in case you have not read it, I urge you to do so. And is there anything I forgot?
No, I think that's good. So I will also turn it on to Urvashi Ben. I don't know if you would like to respond to anything.
Okay, my thanks to Rajendra Bhai for the comments. And obviously Vidya and Amit was just wonderful. And I am really appreciate their effort for presenting their really wonderful, insightful and original observations. And I thank everybody for making this event successful and special. Also, I wants to thank Jivabai. Fairly Jivabai is both the session and both the days he joined us, and especially my humble thanks to Dr. Iqbal Akhtar also for joining our university for this wonderful event. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And before I quit, can I address Vidya ma'am? Is she there? Are you there?
An honor.
Sure.
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Yeah, ma'am. Thanks for the suggestion. You would love to know that I have read Saket way back in 80s when I was in my college, because Hindi was one of my subjects, and Hindi is one of the medium in Delhi University, and I should say that I'm a dedicated reader of Hindi literature since very beginning. Since
Wonderful.
Have you read Ram Ki Shakti Puja by Surikant Tripathi Nirala?
Yes. I'm very fond of Nirala. I'm not
Ram ki Shakti Puja.
Yeah, I'm not as well read as you, but I read a little bit. I enjoy Hindi. I love languages, so whatever I can lay my hands on.
Puja is the most celebrated. Yeah. Ram ki Shakti Puja is the most celebrated work by Suryakant Tripathi Nirala, and it has been, there are multiple interpretations by, the critics from right wing as well as the critics from the Marxist ideology. And both the ideology critics have given equal importance to Ram Ki Shakti Puja. And it has, you can also interpret in your own way if you don't belong to the right or the left, or if you are in the center, if I can say it.
Yeah, I don't
So,
belong. That's something that sort of defines me. I enjoy in myself.
Yeah.
Apathy, I belong nowhere.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I will definitely go back to Nirala. Sorry, Urvashi.
One second. I forget, but can you hear me?
Yes,
very
I can hear you.
Yeah, I want to express.
I can hear you loud and clear, Urvashi.
Okay, thank you, Rajendra Bhai. I would also express my gratitude towards Vanna Didi and all other presentation. Thank you.
Sure, thank you so much. Anyone else have questions or comments that they would like to give the audience, or do you have any concluding remarks you'd like to make?
Iqbal, now that Nirala has been remembered, I remember Rashmirathi by
Dinkar.
Yes.
Dinkar.
Ramdari Singh Dinkar.
Yes, that's amazing book talking about Anna.
Sharan Gupta and Ram Ki Shakti Puja by Nirala. They all are excellent poems. So Dr. Iqbal, Akhtar and Dr. Urvashi, I must say that in the both universities has seen the very global health crisis, whose magnitude and impact is as big as this crisis. It is unprecedented human crisis, solidarity and brotherhood. Both, I think it is the need of the hour, and their topics and their subject is also, I must say that it is towards the humanity, cause of humanity. So I must thank you. Many parts of the society have come to a standstill. The world is moving towards a new standard of living, and we also see a great thing in education. So through this web, we are exchanging our thoughts, our views, and our. You are in USA. My two daughters are in USA. One in West Virginia University. She is an associate professor in electrical engineering, and another is in theater. So whenever I will come to visit USA, I will come to meet you. And
Please,
if you
very wonderful.
come, you just visit us. Dr. Urvashi has my address. I'm very happy with this collaboration.
Yes.
Mumbai University has done. Dr. Urvashi, I must thank you, and Dr. Iqbal Akhtar, you have chosen me. I am a Hindi speaker. Generally, I speak in Hindi. I know that you must be knowing Hindi. Dr. Urvashi, Dr. Iqbal, and Dr. Rajendra, you all people may be knowing Hindi, but just 2-3 lines in English.
And I also requested Dr. Iqbal bhai, whenever you visit India, you be my guest. It will be a great pleasure for me to host you.
Inshallah, we tried to come for the conference last year.
You will have to come.
So
we are looking for that since last 2 years.
Yeah, so I hope eventually I get a visa. I mean, one of the problems is that I'm a Pakistani origin, so it's very difficult for me to get the visa. But I hope that in the future I'm able to visit.
And from our side, we surely do the needful, to help you out for getting visa and all that. But you will have to be with us in next when we are meeting in international conference physically when you people will be in India. Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah, it's an honor and a pleasure.
All Murshid.
Hello.
Yes.
All the Murshid, Kamil and Amil Fazil people are waiting for your visit to India, and you are cordially invited to the national capital of India, Delhi. You're most welcome. Whenever you plan your India trip, let me know, and we'll do something that we can do some work together. We can organize something.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for the generosity of spirit. That's very welcome. And hopefully you'll definitely get a chance to visit India one day.
Dr. Akhtar?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
This is Rashida. I would really like to thank you very much for giving me an opportunity. And Dr. Urvashi Pandya, my heart goes out for you. You gave me, or you allowed me to come to this platform. When I look at Madam Vidya and Madam Urvashi and Dr. Akhtar, and I forgot the name, the lady just said Hindi. I love, yes, I love the languages. I'm a graduate of Hindi school, and Gujarati is my mother tongue, and of course English. But inshallah, more opportunities for future to do research under your guidance, Dr. Akhtar and Dr. Pandya.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Rashida.
Can I say a word, please?
Dr. Urvashi Pandya and Dr. Akhtar.
Yeah. I'm sorry, we're
Yeah,
having a
Shyamal.
problem here.
Yes, Shyamal, we can hear you. Bolo, Shyamal.
उर्वशी पंड्या मैडम, डॉक्टर अख्तर, तहे दिल से शुक्रिया करते हैं कि कोविड-19 के बाद दुनिया में एक अलग तरह से एक भयावह वातावरण होने के बहुत ही सेमिनार ऑर्गेनाइज किया डॉक्टर
5 मिनट लागશે 2 મિનિટ लागશે શું ખાવું છે
उर्वशी पंड्या मैडम से आपका शुक्रिया व्यक्त करती हूँ धन्यवाद.
All right, thank you so much. So if we don't have if there are no more, if there's any, are there any more comments or questions?
Can I?
I think you're having some feedback there.
Dr. Akhtar, can I say something? Can
Sure.
you hear me?
Yep, please go ahead.
I have to say a big congratulations to all of you guys. You have done fantastic. I don't have any words to express. I'm speechless, and it's amazing conference. You, Urvashi Ben, and all the organizing team have done a wonderful job. And I'm very pleased that you guys have the speakers and on the way you organized the subject, the topics, and it was wonderful. And thank you for having me yesterday. And I really enjoyed the conference. Well
Wonderful.
done.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. We really, it's been an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
So what I'll do is I will just conclude the conference then, and just sort of thank everybody for joining us. So I will have this video recording. We'll put it up on YouTube, and I'll send you all the link. You have the link in the chat box if you just want to click on it very quickly and just register for the conference, or you can see the link would be on the flyer. Just add your name, email address, and we'll add you to the listserv. So we try to send out materials every week, and then we'll be doing a series of these lectures. So if you have some research that you're interested in presenting, you want to do just a one-off lecture, we're happy to have that. Or if you have an idea for a conference and people that you like to bring together, if there's some new ideas in terms of vernacular religion, we're working with the Center for South Asian Studies in France, our university, universities in Africa and Asia. So you're more than welcome to help. Next year, I'll be in Tanzania doing some research, as well as in Pakistan. So if there's something that, I'll be at different universities there. If you are interested in sort of collaborating on different projects, historical preservation, books, anything like that, you're more than welcome to join me. So thank you again so much for attending this conference, these 2 days. It's been an honor and a pleasure, and I hope that this helps inspire people to kind of rethink the idea of vernacular religion in South Asia, and really open up to sort of the history and the valuable history of communities. That communities do have an important role to play, particularly in merchant communities, in the history of South Asia, and they they produce and create very interesting artifacts that are actually immense archives that can be from which sort of inspiration, sort of knowledge can be drawn upon the past. And I hope that this serves as inspiration for young scholars and older scholars to work on these projects. So thank you so much for your time, for your patience, and for attending today. And I hope to keep in touch with all of you. Have a wonderful day or evening wherever you're at, and please do keep in touch. Take care.